Well, it is so great to have you back. Justin Whitmel Earley, the author of one of my favorite parenting books, Habits of the Household. And he has a new book called The Body Teaches the Soul 10 Essential Habits to Form a Healthy and Holy Life. Welcome back to the podcast, Justin.
Thank you, Arlene. I am honored you would have me back, especially on such a topic.
Yes. Well, we got to meet each other in real life at
I
a
know, that was
wonderful
the
parenting
best.
conference speaking at Harvest Church in Memphis. That was amazing. And so I love having on guests who I actually know in real life. That brings an extra, source of joy to it. But, 10 years ago, you were a lawyer and a dad, and your life fell apart because your body fell apart. A lot of times we don't recognize, we just like, oh, our body, whatever. Tell us, why is the body so important that you decided to write a book on it?
Yeah, this is 10 years in the making for sure, and by way of failure, not success. So for listeners who don't have background on my story, which is probably most of you, here's my story. I 10 years ago had a collapse, and this was right at the time that I transferred from being a former missionary to lawyer. So I was a missionary in China for almost 5 years in my early 20s. And then I went to law school because I felt really called by God to go to law school. So I ran at that with all the fervor of a man on a call. And then I ended up in my first year of lawyering with a terrible, terrible mental health. It was very sudden. It was a very sudden collapse for me. It was like one night I started experiencing insomnia and panic attacks, and it got worse and worse very rapidly until I was really struggling to sleep. I was needing to medicate or drink alcohol just to go to sleep at night. And I had been converted, the former missionary had been converted to the nervous medicating lawyer really, really quickly. And what was so strange about that time to me, Arlene, was how much it showed up in my body, right? I think The Body Teaches the Soul is the title of this book. I think
Yeah.
before I ever thought about that, it was something like the body catches the attention of the soul, as in something was wrong, but
Yeah.
it showed up in my body first and only then became panic thoughts in my mind. But I didn't really have a good category for this. So there's really been a two-part realization for me ever since. And readers will track with this if you've read any of my books. The first realization was how much ordinary life is actually a set of spiritual disciplines that form who you are, mind, body, and soul. Okay. And so by that, I mean, I look back at that time and I see that I had a really good worldview. So I would put my head, running this way towards God. But I also look back at that time and I see my habits running the opposite way. My habits were completely antithetical to the Christian worldview. So I was full of unhealthy habits that were scrolling and then putting my identity in work because of the way I scrolled my email, shorting my sleep, always adding more to my resume, eating on the go because I was always packing life with more work, not being attentive to my body or my mind. And thus my habits were just pulling, stretching myself. And what I tell readers and people, anybody I talk to, is that when your head goes one way and your habits go the other, your heart tends to follow the habits.
Yeah.
And this has been a driving realization of my past decade about why spiritual formation is so important, why habits are so important in the realm of parenting, in the realm of spirituality. But one of the things that I just didn't have the time, the research, and the Lord works in our life slowly over time. And one of the things that began to emerge about 5 years into my recovery, Arlene, was how much the Lord was using physical disciplines to improve my spiritual health. And this didn't really make sense to me. Okay. I even think I didn't want to admit it at first because I didn't have a category for it. Like, why was fasting having such a huge impact on my mental health? Literally, it was just not eating. Like, how does not eating change your spiritual health? But that's a practice you see all over the Bible. One of the biggest parts of my mental health recovery that gave my soul a feeling of peace was just learning to sleep, like learning to hold a healthy sleep routine. I was amazed at how much my relationship with my family with the Lord, with my children, with work was improved when I started exercising regularly. And I think for a couple years, I carried this guilt actually of like, oh, these are just life hacks and I shouldn't be putting too much stock in them. I don't want to put like my identity in my health, particularly in working out. I don't want it to be a vain endeavor. But this book is the product of, I think, a couple years of the Lord saying, I made you with a body on purpose. I actually like the idea. Like I created you like that on purpose. And
Yeah.
when you honor me in it, meaning honor your limits, care for it,
Yeah.
steward it like any other gift I've given you, you will see shalom, flourishing. And that's the idea that the physical and the mental and the spiritual are all intertwined. And it was me, not him, dividing all this stuff up.
Mm.
And so I got a lot more to say about the theology of that and how that's grounded in the Bible, not just my experience. But that is
Yeah.
how the Lord brought me to see not just how much habits affect the heart, but how much physical habits
Physical
affect the heart.
habits. Yeah, that we think these are not spiritual activities, but they are spiritual activities. You had
Right.
quoted Matthew Walker, PhD, who I really like him on sleep. The best bridge between despair and hope is a good night's sleep. And
Yes,
really
yes.
just the spirituality of, wow, you are just such, it's really easier to be filled with the Holy Spirit when you're working with the body who's rested instead of one that is barely there, barely awake. I want to go somewhere that you were headed, because in the book you give this example of, on one side you can ignore the body,
Mhm.
and then on the other side, you can idolize the body. And that's kind of what you were getting at. Like, I didn't want to get to this point where, oh, this body stuff is working, I'm going to make this an idol. Talk us through,
Yeah.
neither side is good. To ignore it is not good. To idolize it isn't good.
Yes. So this comes from Genesis 2:7, where God creates Adam. And he says he took the dust of the ground and breathed in the spirit of life, and a living soul was born. Sometimes a living human being. Different translations are different, but in the Hebrew, this is the first use of the word soul in the Bible. And this really challenged my categories as I was starting to look at what is a body, what is a soul. Like when I started this research a couple years ago, I don't know what I meant by those terms. I think I thought that the soul was like an invisible spiritual core of like a human being. And I think there's a lot of mystery here, but I think the better use of the term is that a soul, a living soul, is a divine combination of body and spirit that you see in that verse. You get the dust of the ground, that's organic matter, that's the word afar in Hebrew. And then this spirit of life. We know these themes throughout the Bible that wherever God breathes, wherever God is, like life happens. This is spiritual. You combine those two things and you get this incredibly wonderful thing, unique in all of God's creation, called a human being, this divine combination of body and spirit. And when you ignore the body, you're sort of idolizing the spiritual part and saying, really all I am is spirit, which is not biblical, because Genesis 2:7 would say, no, actually, you're a divine combination of both. But when you idolize the body, and this could be vanity through eating or working out, or this could be a true philosophical materialism where you think actually all the world, like all it is atoms. There's no religious or spiritual. Well, that's saying Genesis 2:7 is not quite correct. It's actually, we're really just dust, and people say this stuff, like it's pretty
Yeah.
crazy. People actually say, but Christianity gives this wonderful synthesis of these two things and say, don't be Gnostic. That's the philosophical category for being somebody who thinks only the spiritual matters and this body is really what's weighing me down. It's like, no, God made you with a body on purpose, but don't be materialist. The spiritual is real. And so don't ignore, don't idolize, rather image God through the body. And you might say, it's nice that they all start with I, but what does that mean? Well, imaging God through the body, we know that we're the image of God, meaning we're the physical representation of God. So one way to simplify this, there's many ways to talk about the image of God, but one way that I use throughout the book is to say God is love. And the central call of human beings is to love God and to love neighbor. So any questions we have of the body can be answered through the telos, the purpose of saying, how is health helping us love God and love neighbor better? How is exercise helping us love God and love neighbor better? Because you could easily ignore exercise. You could also idolize it, and neither of those would be good answers. The great question of your life is, how can you move your body in such a way, not that your health span or your lifespan or anything else is maximized, but your love span, how does it help you love God and love neighbor? And as you know from reading it, Arlene, every chapter in the book asks that question: how can we love God and love neighbor more through using our body in this way?
You talk about, can you get up, down on the floor and up to play? Can you do strenuous yard work without injury? Can you enjoy pickup sports, with friends? Are you strong enough to
Mm-hmm.
help a friend move? Can you dance at a friend's wedding? Can you support an elderly parent to walk? It is quite a realization to think, wait a minute, this isn't just this personal thing of like, well, it's my body, I'll do with it what I want. But if I'm loving God and loving neighbor with my body, then, oh, now I have a whole new motivation to do the exercise, because I
Yes.
do want to be able to help my dad, to help him stand up when he needs
Yes.
that. I do want to be able to get on the floor and play with a grandchild someday. Like I want to do those things to love my neighbor.
Right.
Okay, let's get real. We are sitting with a bag of vanilla wafers. I would be sitting with a bag of Oreo cookies, and you just can't eat one. So we're talking about this. This sounds great. Like, yes, let's honor God with our bodies. Yes, let's exercise. But oh my goodness, I've just listened to the podcast and I'm headed to coffee, and then I'm going to have this snack that's super sugary. And so take us there. Do you actually like the vanilla wafers, and how do you make yourself stop?
There's a lot of risky chapters in this book, because anytime you start talking about the body, I mean, honestly, there's so much shame that we have. There's so much confusion that we have. There's so much failure that we have. I mean, when I think back over my life, so many of my spiritual struggles were embodied struggles. And, as I said, I used to have separate categories for this, but now I see, figuring out how to honor God in your body means figuring out how to take lust and turn it into love, how to take over desire for food and turn it into healthy desire for God and health. And so the food chapter in this book was particularly hard to write, because, I and so many other people have hangups over this. And I do want to say, I do. Okay. One thing that became really clear as I was researching and writing this book is the revelation that some people's metabolism hides their sins. And I would raise my hand there. I really struggle with self-control, but you wouldn't know it from looking at my body. And some people's metabolism hides their virtues. Like, they're really, really working hard, and their body just doesn't look
Yeah.
like what they want it to look like, right? And
Right.
what we just said, I just want to remind everybody of, we're trying to pivot away from this idolization of the body, where when you talk about eating, you have to talk about body image. And we're trying to say, okay, no, body image is the mirror, right? It's the idea of like thinking through eating in terms of, how do I feel about myself and how do I look in the mirror? Remember that we're going to image God. So that's moving from a mirror to a window and saying, how am I looking through my body to how I can love, not at my body to how I look. And when you think about that, what we're really talking about is, how is eating changing how you feel and act in the world? And that, for me, is really the center. So I tell a story at the beginning of the chapter that you're referencing, which is being in high school alone with a box of vanilla wafers. And this was just one of my earliest memories of realizing that I didn't quite have control over myself. And I think a lot of people relate when it comes to eating. We're like, yeah, I'm not sure if I'm driving the ship or not. And one of the things I want to help people identify is that in a world of ultra processed, very refined, sugary, salty, fatty foods, it is super hard to control yourself, because you're not alone here. You are in the presence of food companies that are
Yeah.
making things that are addictive, and they are
Yes.
addictive through dopamine cycles, as in your dopamine spikes wildly when you eat something that salty or that sugary. And I remind people in the book that dopamine works in a pain pleasure balance, as in you get this huge spike of pleasure from eating all these vanilla wafers, and then the brain likes homeostasis. It doesn't like spikes, so it actually creates pain and discomfort and shoots you into this feeling that we know so well of like, ew, regret, shame. And so we bounce back and forth between this pain and pleasure, right? Indulgence and shame. And what's amazing about the good news of the Bible is that you weren't made for that, right? That you know that's not right. What the Bible does say, and this is actually very close to the last verse I cited, Genesis 2:9. There's so much stuff about the body in Genesis, so helpful. Genesis 2:9 says that the trees in the garden were good, beautiful to look at, and good for food. There's this dual aspect to creation that we're supposed to delight in it, but we're also supposed to depend on it. Like eating is a feature, not a flaw of being created. And so I offer people this idea of moving out of the indulgence and shame cycle to moving, like trade indulgence for dependence. Like you need to depend on God, not just indulge in creation. But you're
Yeah.
also supposed to delight in it, not feel shame about it.
Mhm.
And if you think about that, and the diagrams in the book are really going to help you here because it's always two sides of the pendulum. Fasting and feasting are the two biblical traditions for cultivating these virtues. As in, when you fast, you cultivate dependence. And it's not only good for you physically, it's tremendous for you emotionally and spiritually
Yeah.
because you're resetting dopamine, but you're also practicing something that is true of you, that you were made to depend. And it's hard to really know that and learn it until you feel it, which is why now I realize why fasting was so helpful for my emotional health. But on the other side of that, you're not supposed to live in fasting. I mean, we know this. Jesus was like, don't fast when the bridegroom is here. That's why my disciples aren't fasting. He was accused for feasting too much, not fasting too much. And the trajectory of the biblical narrative is to a future of a wedding feast of the Lamb, not to like heaven where we're all super spiritual and we do the spiritual disciplines all the time. It's actually like where we feast together. So those aren't cheat days. Those are rhythms where you're celebrating creation and leaning into food. And those are two of the disciplines that I want to offer people. Learn to fast and really cultivate dependence. Learn to feast and not feel guilty, like really cultivate delight. But in between those two, you need to learn the regular discipline of ordinary fare, which is where not too much, not too little. The biblical ethic of don't be mastered by anything. The Proverbs get really serious. They say, like, if you put a knife to your throat, if you're at a king's table and you're over desiring, it's like it gets. There's
Right.
concepts all throughout the Bible of be careful. Like
Yeah.
in a normal day, be careful. So you got your fasting, you got your feasting, but in between, just develop this ethic. And that to me is a spiritual discipline, not a health hack, because I'm asking, all right, how am I going to control my desires? And a better way to put that is steward them into a
Yeah.
healthy place where I'm moving in between biblical paradigms and not this huge pendulum swing of dopamine.
Yeah. On the other side of this break, we're going to talk about technology, but we're going to take a short break to hear from our sponsor. And we're back. So God makes these foods that don't cause spikes, right? And then isn't that interesting that technology, we pick up our technology and that's pumping dopamine in our body. And then we
Yes.
pick up food and that pumps dopamine in our body. And I can't help but think, spiritually, how Satan wants to attack our bodies, right? To make us sick, to make us ill, so that we will grow dependent on these false things and not God, and how we were kind of attacked on all sides. Talk about technology, because I know that, let's go here. You tell a story in the book about how you dropped your boys off at school, like the carpool line, and the car
Yeah.
pulled right in front of you. Tell that story, because I think that's so helpful about technology.
This was a big realization for me. I was driving my boys to school one morning and somebody cut me off and I like got my glare, ready.
That's right.
And even, you always do this. So you pull up and you're like, who would do such a thing? And as I started to pull up at the red light, I recognized the child in the back seat. It was one of my kids' friends. And I was like, oh my gosh, I know that parent. And what I noticed about myself in that moment was not like, oh, now I'm not going to tell him off because I know this person. That was certainly true. But what I realized is I went from thinking, how dare this person, like, what a selfish person, like, to thinking, oh, they're probably just in a rush like me. I started making excuses for them, believing
Right.
the best in them. And what I
Yes.
realized was that an embodied human being changed how I felt about that person. And when it was a disembodied representation of a human being, just a car in front of me, I made all sorts of judgments about that person. I would later hear somebody express how social media, intentionally or not, is basically designed to do this. It is.
Yeah.
Think about the bathroom walls at a rest stop or in your high
Mhm.
school. Like, the ways that we talk about people on the bathroom walls are what they are because we are not face to face.
We are not
And
there.
chat rooms, comments, social media posts are great. I think it's helpful for people to think about them as sort of the modern bathroom walls, which is like, you don't talk this way to actual people. You talk this way to disembodied usernames because
Yeah.
you're not actually encountering these people. And
Mm.
so there's a lot of places we could go from here, but I would just
Yeah.
say one of the most helpful things I think for people to understand is that as you move up the ladder of embodiment, your ability, your capacity, and your willingness to love somebody increases. And that should be a signal that we were made to live embodied lives.
Mhm.
And it's certainly a call to move towards embodiment, because my thesis, and I believe it's biblical, is that the more embodied we are, the more loving we are. And the
Mm.
less embodied we get, the less loving we get. And if we're called to a life of love of God and neighbor, then that actually means we're called to a life of embodiment too.
And I think maybe 50 years ago, we wouldn't have had to have this conversation because everything was embodied. But now, when our kids are on technology, we are on technology, to realize, wait a minute, like you write in the book, the body teaches the soul, and how the thumb swipes is very much connected to what the heart loves.
Yes.
And for us to realize, like, wait, these things that we're doing with disembodied, talking to people that are not there, whether it's truly AI or it's just someone, but you don't know who it is, you
Hmm.
treat them different than you would treat someone if they were really embodied right in front of you.
Yes.
And to be really careful to let your body teach you, like, would I say the same thing if I was face to face with this person? Like, that's a really good metric.
Yes. And I think half of this is how you're treating and loving other people. And this is really important, obviously. Like, we know that we're
Yeah.
in the modern world, we're like at a historic levels of disagreement, we're at historic levels of division. And undoubtedly, this is due to our dialogue moving more online. Now, this is not unusual, right? Like, if you read newspapers from the 1800s, people were ripping each other the way our
Right.
political
Sure.
parties rip each other now. But we poured gasoline on the fire. And so we have a technological problem. But I also want to note that there's a mirror here too. The way you feel after an afternoon scrolling Instagram or TikTok, instead of doing what you felt like you ought to be doing around the office or the house, you feel like that for a reason. You're not made to feel that disoriented. You're not made to feel that jealous. You're not made to feel that confused about what's true in the world. And a lot of this, I think, I don't love the word self-care, because it has a lot of problematic connotations and misinterpretations. But I would just say, you are not honoring your own body when
Mhm.
you sit hunched over a screen just swiping with your thumb. There's a reason you feel like you do, and that's
Yeah.
because you're moving away from embodiment. um, you're moving towards a disembodied world of comparison and desire, and it is very much like sitting with that box of Oreos or sitting with that
Right.
box of wine. You're not going to feel good because
Mhm.
you weren't meant to treat your body like this. And I think that we think this is just mind stuff. Like, I shouldn't be thinking about this. And that's true. Like, there's a lot of stuff you shouldn't be thinking about. Like, you're seeing images and messages on the internet that are just not fruitful, not excellent, not good, not trustworthy,
Mhm.
not praiseworthy. All the things that the New
Yeah.
Testament tells us, like, don't think about those things.
Yeah.
You're also literally with your body doing, like, putting it in unhealthy positions, and putting your brain in, and like, you're not caring for your brain in the same way you want
Right,
to care for your
right.
body through food.
Yes.
You want to care for your brain through healthy interactions. And it's unsurprising that you feel so much better when you go hang out with a group of people in person. You usually don't come back full of rage, jealousy, and anger. But spend a couple minutes online, you will come back with rage,
Yes.
jealousy, and
Yeah.
anger. And so that's
Yeah.
part of my push in this chapter, is to say, move up the ladder of embodiment.
Mhm.
I mean, I
Yeah.
use technology a lot. But one of my recommendations is, if you can move from a text to a voice memo, do it. If you can move from a voice memo to a call, do it. If you can move from a call to a video call, do it. If you can move from a video call to an in-person chat, to an in-person sit down for a long period of time, all those things are going to improve your life. And beware of that lower level of
I love
embodiment.
that.
And the lowest possible level is social media.
Yeah. I love that. Like move up, like don't stay there, move up.
Yeah,
Okay. There's so
like
many.
some uses are good. Just keep moving up,
Yes.
you know.
Yes. Someone's listening and they're like, okay, I know I need to get back to exercise. I know I need to get back moving, but I don't have time. I don't have the money, whatever it is. Talk to us about how you got back into this at 34 years old and told yourself, I can't do this, but somehow you did. So give us that inspiration.
um, I'm trying to think of how to tell this story in the shortest version possible. But I I basically found myself starting my own law firm in my mid 30s. And one of the things I realized is that I want exercise to be a part of my routine because my body was struggling so much from sitting at a keyboard all day,
Yeah.
typing. I call it the T-Rex position where I'm just
Right.
literally, this is my life. And I was working in a coffee shop. I heard all this banging next door. And I literally was like starting my law firm from a coffee shop. I didn't even have an office yet. And I walked out to hear what this banging was. And it was this gym. Like there was this guy lifting weights in the gym. And I thought, my gosh, if I can make this a part of my routine, great. The only problem was, as it turns out, thinking about and wanting to exercise is way different than actually doing it. Like actually doing it hurts. It's really hard. This is why so many of us quit. And I remember in the first couple of classes I was going to this gym, I kept just quitting mid-workout. I would go get water and take a break. I was at least starting to exercise, but I was like probably 2 or 3 weeks in, and in one workout, I'm about to like quit mid-workout and get water. And the coach comes up to me. His name is Ryan. He's still my coach. I actually was hanging out with him this morning. And he was like, hey, just pick up the bar one more time. We're doing this exercise. We had to pick up the bar over our head like a million times. And I was like, okay, I do it one more time. And I was like, can I get water now? He's like, no, just pick it up one more time. Okay, we do it one more time. And then I realized he's going to stay here. And I still had 8 minutes left of this workout. And I was like, oh my gosh, he's not leaving. This dude is going to push me. And I remember being, collapsed on the floor after this, feeling exhausted in my body, but kind of satisfied, like, oh, the wall that I thought was the wall was actually not the wall. I had more to do beyond me. And I always tell people, like, you could put that on a poster at the gym, that would be nice. But for me, it was the next day that actually changed my life. I was helping my kid. He was in his high chair. The next morning, he knocked his milk off the high chair, and I bent down to pick it up. I'm so sore from the workout the day before. And I put it on his high chair, and then I walked to do something in the kitchen, and he knocks it off. You know how toddlers do.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know if they know what they're doing or they're just playing, but I felt this rage inside me of like, he's doing this on purpose. He's doing this to spite me. And I turned around, like getting ready to discipline a toddler for being a toddler. And feeling like, it's funny when I tell it, but I was in that moment of like, I'm so frustrated. Like, I'm done. I
Right.
don't want to be patient. I'm going to yell at this kid, do
Totally.
not knock your milk off. And then I hear this voice in my head, just pick it up. And I like looking around for Coach Ryan, but this is not him. Like, this is the Holy Spirit. And I remember smiling at my son, picking it up, putting it back on the high chair. And suddenly this like divine revelation of the Holy Spirit clicked in me. That the wall is not the wall physically. We know this in exercise, that it's actually healthy for you to push past your limits. And neither is it so spiritually. When I think I'm done with patience, and I tell myself this so much as a parent, like, I'm done. You know how you say that? Like, I'm done.
Yeah.
Like, I'm done
Yeah.
being patient, kind today.
Yeah.
It's like, no, beyond me, there is more patience, because beyond me, there is God. Like, there's grace. He's here to help me. And that was the day I realized that the gym could be a gymnasium of the soul, that there was something I would learn in physical exercise that was always applicable to spirituality. And this is 7 years later, Arlene, 7 years later.
Totally.
I'm super interested in that still.
I love that.
Now, it is true that I've gotten a lot more energy. I sleep a lot better. I work a lot better. I'm strong enough to play with my kids. And I have 4 boys, so they're very active. But I think for anybody, that children are very physically trying.
Yeah.
And all this stuff about loving your spouse and being there for your family actually takes a modicum of physical health. And so I see the gym not just as the place where I'm sort of training in that life of love, of how can I push myself to know that that's what Christ does. He pours himself out for the sake of love. but I'm also equipping my body to love. And so as I age, I just turned 40, I realize like my capacity to look a certain way and lift a certain amount of weight is going to continually move in the direction of what you expect. I'm getting older.
Right.
But I see exercise as a way to train me to continue to be more loving day after day after day after day, no matter what my body looks or feels like. And that to me is super compelling. And now I used to think about like, how can I fit exercise into my busy schedule? Like I don't have time. Well, once you see that spiritual importance of it, now I'm like, all right, I need to fit life around exercise because this is actually kind of a core of what it means to remain a healthy human being. I'm happy to expound on that at all. I just want to add one more point though.
Yeah.
Some of you listening will be like, but I'm injured, or I'm, I'm 70. I can't go running or
Right.
lifting weights or anything. I always like to note for people the exercise that is most strongly correlated to health and longevity is walking outside. Also, one of the things that is most strongly correlated to overall well-being and happiness and mental health is walking outside with friends. So if your low bar of application in this chapter is just starting to take a walk a couple times a week, ideally with a friend, know that your bar is probably higher than me if you're doing that. And most of us can do that. So don't let the enemy get in your head and be like, well, you can't, or you're different. Most of us can do actually the most important thing. And that would just be to walk outside for a little bit.
And this conversation has been so good because it makes you kind of excited, right? Like, I'm going to eat better. I'm going to try to exercise because I want to be a good steward of my body. And we all need this jump start. I have the right BMI. Like, I'm okay. I know I'm not overweight, but believe me, I love my cookies. There isn't a sweet in this world that I do not like. If you give me a bar, I will eat the entire, there's a place that we put our chocolate bars. So I'll put the chocolate bar there and then I will eat the entire bar in one day. But I never tell my family this, especially my health loving husband. So I'll pretend it's there, for like a week, and because no one else looks for it but me. And I know that it only took me a day to eat that, but I keep like the wrapper in there so it kind of looks like something's there. I mean, I am so there. And I can attest that when I eat good, I feel good. And when I eat bad, I feel bad, but I still do it because it's so delicious and all the dopamine. But listening to you today has really been a great jumpstart to, hey, I want to stay on this right track. And I want to honor God by honoring my body to do it in a way so I can keep loving my kids and keep loving my spouse. Thank you for this. How can people find out more about your book and connect with you, Justin?
Two great ways to do that would one be go to my website. That's justinwhitmelearley.com, or Google Justin Earley author lawyer, and you'll find it. You can sign up for my email list there. That's a great way to hear about what I'm working on. I also send a lot of free devotionals and plans for stuff like this, like, how to kickstart your eating and spiritual
Yes.
rhythms, or like a devotional plan, because I'm big into intermingling the spiritual and the physical disciplines. So
Yes.
that's a great place for that. You could also follow me on Instagram at Justin Whitmel Earley, and you'll hear short videos, little short reels, or posts about this same stuff. So short form content there, long form content on email lists. And I'd love to have you follow along with either or both.
Thank you so much, Justin. This has been fantastic.
Thank you, Arlene.